Welcome to the section 2 of sensory marketing, which we will discuss by the chapter 3 and chapter 4. In chapter 3 is the sensory principle for vision, and chapter 4 is sensory principle for sound. So let's dive into the first chapter, which is chapter 3. So in chapter 3, sensory principle for visions, it will focus on providing an overview of vision roles in sensory marketing. Along with that, it focusing on its characteristic and the cultural difference about visuals in different cultures. And it will also discuss about how vision cues influence brands, products, and service environment. So let's see the table content of the chapter 3. So in total, we have five main segments. The first one is human eyes and visions. Secondly, is just about the characteristic of visions. And third one is the visual perceptions and central cultures. Uh, the fourth is the service environment, the how visions influence the service environment, and lastly is how the visions influence the brand product. Let's dive in the first one, which is the human eyes and visions. So the human eye is actually a very important part of our bodies. So the visuals that we gain from our eyes is actually a kind of information that will put into your mind in order to help us to judge these surroundings and form our perceptions, our thoughts, and our therefore our behavior. So the human eyes and visions is very therefore very important in the to shape the customer perceptions. So the most influential sense is visions, as we discussed in the previous chapter, in how people actually perceive the brand, product, and the space. So this will help us shape the brand identity, the value, and the emotions we will have with the brand. And later we'll discuss why it can do it. And therefore, visions play a central role in helping the customer uh, gain the attention to the brain and therefore form their long-term and short-term memory with the brain and the product. For example, uh, like we've seen the Apple product, so the Apple product clean minimalism design actually reinforced this premium and innovative brand identity in our mind. So we see the product of Apple, and then day by day, we form the perceptions, the identity for Apple, which is a very premium and innovative brand. So that is importance of vision in customer perceptions. Secondly is the visual stimuli and their role. So talking about visions, we have to talk about the visual elements. So which is include the color, the shape, the design, packaging, lighting, all things that can reflect in our eyes. So these cues actually will trigger our emotional response, and therefore it will influence our purchase decisions. For example, like Coca-Cola red color. So it will evoke the excitement and energy in our body, in our mind, and therefore it reinforces its brand personality, which is a very youth, athletics, enthusiastic beverage drink brand. So later we'll discuss how can these key visual elements do this to our emotion and our mind. Thirdly is the visual consumptions and digital behavior. So the visual consumption actually refer to how consumer use their eyes to interact with the brand. So use their eye to see the products, use their eye to see the logos, the store layout of the brand. So therefore, in today's social media driven cultures, the visual not just uh, limited at the traditional store or the logos or the brand names. It also be the Instagram image, the video content on social media, and these actually heavily affect the brand engagement in the customer mind. The fourth one is about the visual touch point. It's actually beyond advertising. So like I've said, in the digital driven cultures nowadays, so the traditional ads is just not enough. So every visual interaction points actually matter, like the website UI or the packaging, the store layout, all kind of it. It's actually really affecting the customer emotional and perceptions and behavior. So this cumulative experience, the overall of what the customer see about the brand, the product, all kind of it will contribute to the overall brand perceptions. So in this part, we talk about how important the visions actually impact the brand, product, and the customer too. So now we first know about the importance and role of visions in the overall customers' perceptions, emotions. Now, let's see the characteristic of visions. We first discuss about the psychological aspect of the visions, which is the eyes. So first is about the visual perception. So visual perception is actually the ability to interpret the external cues and stimuli of the environment as a visual impressions. So we actually see the visual stimuli, the lighting, the color, etc. The visual elements I have listed above is the visual impressions, and the visual impressions actually go into the cognitive process. So the cognitive process actually transfer these visual impressions that we see by our eyes and transform is to the understanding and the meaning of what we see. So it's the cognitive process of understanding what we see into what it is. Secondly, we talk about the sensory organs of the eyes. So the eyes actually functions like a camera. So as you see, the pupils, the outliers, will adjust the light index and the corner and the length that will reflect the light. The retina will capture the image and then send it to the brain via the optic nerve. And these process that the eyes enable us to detect the contrast such as the light, dark, large, the small, the broad, the narrow, all kind of dimensions and a characteristic of our environment, the object we see. So that is how the our eyes functions. And let's talk about the color perceptions. So color perceptions actually form the foundations of what we see. So we see the six basic color like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. And these color perceptions actually influence our mind very much, and we will discuss later in the chapter. And lastly is I want to talk about the visions is further enhanced when it's combined with other sense. So as we talk, vision is like the most influential sense in our sensory marketing, the multi-sensory experience. So the vision is the most important, but the vision will further enhance if we combine it with the other sense, like hearing, touch. So it will reinforcing the multi-sensory nature of perceptions. Now we talk about the psychological aspect, the cognitive and affective response. So the let's discuss about the affective of visual ads. So the visual ads is what we call it combine the image and the emotions. So the visual ads actually helping the customer to form a strong brain associations, and people will remember visual better than plain text. So the visual ads actually help us to enhance recall. And when visual and verbal elements align with each other, is combined with each other, and it's help each other, the message that the customer receive will be reinforced in the memory better. So for example, a Coca-Cola ads will showing us a joyful family enjoying the drink. So it's the visual. Alongside with that is they also include the slogan "Taste the Feeling." So it's about the verbal, what we hear, and the two of that, the visual of the family enjoy the drink and the slogan "Taste the Feelings" will strengthen the brand recall and emotional connections in customer. Secondly, is about cognitive and affective response to the visual elements. So the visual elements such as, like I've said, color, the shape, the design, simultaneously will generate the cognitive response of customer. So it will evoke the customer respond about the perceptions of the product functions, usability, durability, and values. And also with that, it also generates the affective response, which means that the emotional connections and aesthetics pleasures of the customer towards that visual element. So often the sensory designs of how the product looks and how it feels will actually influence the emotional response more than just technical features. So conclusions, for example, like we've seen the Apple Slick product design, right? So it's very have a very minimalist shape, the clean lines and elegant color, which uh, strongly create the emotional appeals in our minds. So whenever we look at the Apple product, we'll see that it's very beautiful. And even that before the customer will consider is the technical aspect. So they immediately see this as a very beautiful product, even if they don't know the technical functions of the Apple product is good or not. Lastly is the emotional impacts and on the customer attitudes. So the visual ads actually trigger the emotional response I've said above. So this leading to a more favorable attitudes and higher purchase intentions of customer. It's very obvious. So because the positive emotion, therefore will make customer more creative, they open and receptive to the advertising, and even accept the weaker brand arguments. And furthermore, the positive mood will enable unconscious processing of ad information and which increase the ad effectiveness without the active awareness. So all of that, the positive mood, the positive emotions, push the favorite ad to and higher purchase intentions. So that's why. So in the third part, which is the visual perceptions and societal cultures, in this segment we will have four parts to discuss, which is the visual perception first, secondly the individual preference, thirdly the group preference, and lastly the visual symbolism. Let's dive into the visual perceptions. So what is the visual perceptions actually? So visual perceptions refer to how an individual will recognize and then interpret, understand the visual cues and stimuli in their environment. So therefore, it becomes the foundations of human behavior when entering a specific environment. Because you can see all message and signal are received through the sensory stimulations, and in this case, the visions, then the understanding. So it's become the foundations for the behavior. So, secondly, is that the perception is not isolated. It was shaped by individual interactions with the environment. So the process will start with is sensations, and therefore it is selective in that people do not notice all the stimuli, but they will focus on those that interest or satisfy them. So we only focus on what interests or satisfy us, and as a result, the visual perceptions is unique to each person, and it therefore influences their attitudes, motivations, and social context in a very different ways. So each customer have a very different visual perceptions and therefore a very different attitude, motivations, and social context. Second, the individual preference of visions. So each person will have a different levels of visual sensitivities. So some people they will quickly notice the change in color or design, while others they may not notice it very easily. And some individual can mentally visualize the image without needing the external cues. For example, the athletics often use their mental imaginary to prepare for the competitions. And also, there's a difference in the gender in how the individuals perceive the visual cues or visual stimuli in the environment. So there's a gender difference exists in how visual information is perceived and processed. So often women are generally better at recognizing the abstract shape and the name object. So women also tend to react more emotionally to both pleasant and unpleasant image, while men on the other hand, show a higher brain activities than women when they view the erotic image. So it's possibly this difference in women and men, possibly due to the biological difference in their visual processing that really relate to their sexual attractions. So women like emotional thing, pleasant and unpleasant image. Uh, Men on the other hand, they're attracted to the erotic, aesthetic, erotic image. The third one is about group preference. So in this part, we will discuss how each social group or social cultures have different view of visions. So the culture will influence how people fix their gaze. The first thing is what they pay attention to. So in the Southeast Asia, they will more focus on the relationship between the background and the main object. While on the other hand, the Westerns, they tend to focus more directly on the main object itself. And there's also the difference between culture and culture in terms of the color perceptions. Like, for example, the Southeast Asia, they are better at noticing the color change when color spread across the wide area. But for America, they are faster at detecting the color change in the center of the image. So, therefore, even within the single country, the understanding of visuals and preference can also vary not in just between country and country. So for example, among different Chinese ethnic groups, the blue is often seen as a more calming color than red. and therefore blue is generally the most universal preference color across all the cultures. And the company actually really apply this insight into their visual image of the brand. For example, like the technology brand, they use blue for trust and claim, like Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And this platform will use blue to convey trust, reliability, and non-aggressive tone, which is important in social interaction space. And lastly is that people will tend to have a stronger feelings about certain colors, and these emotional reaction influence how they respond to the visual elements too. So that is one notice. So in the last part of this segment, we will discuss about the visual symbolisms. So in nowadays, people often use products as a symbols to represent who they are or who they want to be in the eyes of others, as we have discussed in the previous chapter. So the symbol here is very easy. It can be anything that represents something else. It could be a logo, it could be a number, it could be a color, phrase, or even an image. Anything that can represent us with something else. So the visual elements such as the color, the shape, the style, and design can carry the symbolic value. And this symbolic value derived from the visual elements will connect emotionally with the individual dreams, their identity, or their social status. So all kind of the alignments in that we have with the product is actually formed emotionally through the uh, visual elements. And uh, next is what's discussed about the how these symbols can vary across cultures. So the symbol across cultures can hold very different meanings, depends on the context of that country or that cultures. So symbol we tie often tied to holidays or religions. Like for example, red is linked to Christmas in Western cultures, but it will link to Lunar New Year's in China. Black and orange, on the other hand, associate with Halloween in many cultures. So the visual symbolism is therefore critical in decisions about brand names, logos, label, and packaging. So for example, the Chinese consumer, they prefer brand names that are visually attractive and culturally meaningful. And they also favor the simple, easy to remember logos that reflect their traditional Chinese thinking too. British customer, on the other hand, would pay more attention to how a brand name sounds, not just how it's visually attractive. And therefore, when designing a advertising campaign, it's very essential to match the visual elements with the cultural expectations and value of the target audience at that place, that area, that culture, that country. So a brand name and visual identity should reflect the emotional meaning, the cultural value, the local preference in order to build a strong customer connection with the brand. And I have here the very famous campaign example for what I have discussed above, which is the Coca-Cola Vietnam, the Tết campaign, Tết Gắn Tết. So in this campaign, they will use often they will use the red and gold packaging, so it reflect a very strong Vietnamese Tết symbols, which represent the luck and the fortunes. Also, in their TVCs and digital ads, they also show the family gathering, gift giving, and the importance of reconnections during Tết. And lastly, they feature the traditional Tết elements, the visual elements, like bánh chưng, hoa mai, áo dài, and calligraphy. So all of that, of what they do, actually blends the global branding of Coca-Cola with the color cultures of Tết in the Vietnamese culture. And they will use visual symbolize and language that resonate with the Vietnamese value of family, traditional, and luck, therefore build an emotional connections by making the Coca-Cola part of the Tet rituals. So like giving gift to the parents, they will give like a box of Coca-Cola. So in the result, this campaign becomes make Coca-Cola becomes a very familiar, cultural, meaningful symbol of celebrating and unity in Vietnam during Tet. So in the next segment, we'll see how visions actually shape and affect the service environment of companies. So in this part, S and Harris have classified the stimuli in service environments into three categories. The first category is ambient factors like background elements, like temperatures, the scent of the service environment. The second is the design factors, which is the visual, the structural elements like layout, color, lighting, and lastly, is the social factors, which is the people present in the service environments like the staff and other customers. And in this part of service environment related to visions, we just discussed the most important factors like architectures, color, lighting, and interior design and social stimuli. So let's dive into the first one, which is the visual stimuli. So first one, visual stimuli. So the atmospheres of the service environment is mostly experienced through the visual stimuli, as I have talked about. All kind of visual elements that we see turn into the visual stimuli. So like the architect, the layout, decorations, natural lighting, material, store, exterior is the visual stimuli that creates the uh, emotional and the frictional reactions for the customer. And according to the stimulus organism and response, the SOR model, the sensory stimuli affect the customer emotional state, which then will lead to the approach or avoidance behavior. Uh, Now we will discuss visual stimuli as a design factors. Can be the aesthetics like the style, the shape, the color that will create the sensory pleasure for the customer. And the next one is the functional. So it can be the visual stimuli can be the functional factors like signage, the layout that will help the customer navigate and interact with the service environment itself. So in visual marketing, the company often use visual symbols like ad, packaging, and logo to influence the customer perceptions. Secondly, we talk about the architecture in the service environment. So, in terms of architectures, high ceiling are considered one of the top three most important architectural features for the consumer psychological well-being because the high ceiling actually closely linked to the sense of freedom because they create the feeling of spacious, breathable environment which positively affects how people think, feel, and behave in a space that can therefore encourage their abstract thinking and encourage positive emotional response of the customer. And this is why almost cuisine will have the high ceiling to create an illusion of comfortable and openness that encourage the customer to stay longer in mall. Secondly, window will also play a vital role in shaping the cognitive response in shopping environments because the presence of window will enhance the sense of openness and creativity in customer, while the lack of window can lead to a feeling of confinement. It restrict them in one place, very uncomfortable for the customer. And this leads to the concept of window shopping, which then makes sense of the concept of window shopping because the window shopping illustrates the design, uh, how well designed the store front window can capture the shopper attention so strongly that they appear to interest in the window itself too. And the concept of window shopping actually reflects the power of visual display in stimulating the customer curiosity and engagement. So thirdly is about color in service environment. So color will act as the emotional triggers, much like advertisement by evoking both affective and cognitive response in the individuals I've said above. So color are often categorized into warm colors such as red, yellow, which evokes the energies, excitement, and urgencies. So the red symbolizes attention, for example, dangers, power, and passions, and often used in promotional sign to attract the eyes. On the other hand, like yellow, which suggests joy, cheerfulness, and visibility, which is why it appears to be a warning signs, like vest and smiley face. On the other hand, color can categorize into the cool color, such as blue, green, which associate with relaxation, calmness, and trust. So, for example, if I've said above, blue represents stability, harmony, and authority. So, which frequently used by trusted brands like Facebook, BMW, and Samsung. Uh, Green, on the other hand, symbolizes nature, sustainability, and financial well-being. So, it's often linked to organic or eco-friendly products. And lastly is the neutral color, like black, white, or gray, who serve as a balancing tone that complement or frame the other color in the environment. So The research also showed that the color influenced moods and time spent when shopping and the likelihood of purchase in customer. For example, the blue color environment, like mostly blue, are generally prefer over the red color in designing the color for the environment because the blue color have a more calming effect, which leading to a longer staying time of the customer and therefore a higher purchase percentage of them. Fourth is body lighting. So lighting is such a powerful vision stimuli that draws attention and guides the explorations of the customer toward a product and help the customer perceive both the products and the atmosphere of the service environment. So for example, in a wine store, the lighting, uh, clear bright lighting will influence how carefully the shopper examines the bottle of wine, and engaging with the display of those bottles. And uh, beyond just visibility for the customer that they can use the light to read about the information on the product, the lighting actually also communicates the mood and meaning. So the dim, or we often call the yellow dark lighting, will foster a dreamlike emotional experience, which encouraging the imaginations and a deeper emotional connections with these service environment. And that's why we see like bookstores mostly have a yellow dim light for customer to read books in a relaxed environment. However, the dim light can also reduce the mental alertness of the customer. So in restaurants, using this type of light, maybe leads to a less healthy food choice for customer as they become more relaxed and less analytical of what they eat. On the other hand, the bright light enhance the product visibility, like I said above, and therefore they encourage the interactions with the product, such as touching it or handling the merchandise. So we also use the dynamic lighting strategies to create the seasonal or product-specific effect. So we will have often in store or in the restaurant, etc., the service environment, they will have the seasonal adjustment. So it will change lighting color based on the time of the years. Like they will have the green, mostly green color in spring, yellow in autumn, etc. And furthermore, is to uh, have the product enhancement. So lighting can actually cause product enhancement because they all, like for example, we use in the supermarket, they will use red lighting for meat to make the meat more appeal, fresher, more appetizing for the customer when they choose the meat. Uh, Another example is that they will use cool lighting for fish and custom lighting for products to ensure the tomatoes and other fruits will look vibrant and appealing for in customer eyes. So the next part is the interior design in service environment. So interior design is one of the most powerful visual stimuli influencing the customer behavior and emotional response in the service environment because the interior design is the combination of all the visual elements that just talked about. So to make a strong impact, all which like interior elements such as the shelf, the display, design, lighting, the layout, they must work together to align with the customer design and expectations when they walk into that service environment. So these components will create a cohesive visual identity that therefore shape the perceptions and moods of the customer when they step into that environment, step into their surroundings. And a key notice is that the key zone for interior design is the threshold area, which is the first space that the customer encounter when they step into the service environment. That is the most important area that the interior design have to very taking account, very focus on that area because this area will play a crucial role in forming the first impressions of customer and therefore decide whether the shopper will continue staying in that space and exploring that space. The last part is the social stimuli in service environment. So the service environment, the staff and the other customer will act as a social stimuli that therefore significantly influence the overall customer experience of the other customer. So it's well related to the behavior, the appearance, the attitudes of this service personnel. Like I said, the staff, it will shape how the consumer feel, therefore affecting their perception of trust and professionalism and satisfaction toward that store or that service environment. So the staff interaction with customer is very important. So for example, in the airline industry, the confident and capable staff create a feelings of safety and assurance among passengers. Therefore, it will keep the flight very stable and very calm. And also, other customer are the social stimuli that can influence the atmospheres of the service space through their present, their behavior, and their interactions with other customers too, because they will conduct, they conduct will can set a tone, uh, either positive or negative, that can affect how the other in that store feels. So if they shouting or they doing not very appropriate behavior uh, in the service environment in the store, the other customer actually feel very upset or they're not very comfortable staying in that store for longer. And in conclusion, together, both staff and customer are the co-creator of the value that shaping not only the functional service delivery of that service environment of the store or the restaurants, but also the emotional and symbolic meaning of the environment. For example, when you step into a very luxury restaurant, the expectations of customer when stepping into that place is that they will have a very silent, quiet atmosphere, environment, very quiet environments, very luxury run. The staff will act very professional. They will care for you. They look very trustworthy, and the customer in that place is also very respectful to other customer. They don't create noise or they don't shout at each other, etc. So that really affects the customer experience. Okay, the last segment of chapter 3 is how the visual shape and affect brands and product. So the first thing is we also discuss the visual stimuli of brands and products is on visual. So in modern society, people constantly surrounded by visual stimuli of brand and products. For example, ads on social media, emails, website, newspaper, the TV, and in-store product. And because of this, it's nearly impossible to escape the visual impact of brand and product in the customer daily life. So we have to really take advantage of that and make it good. So for a company, visual elements such as color, logo, or product design, and especially packaging, are essential tools to actually communicate the brand identity and make the brand or the product easily recognizable for the customer. So let's dive into the first parts, the first factors of brand product, but really important in shaping customer perceptions, is the advertisement and commercials. So uh, talk about advertisement and commercial. We talk about visual ads. In this context, we talk about visual ads, which aim to attract the attention, build brand image, and influence the purchase behavior of the customer. So the advertising will work on both the short term, like price campaign, and the long term, like brand image building levels for the customer. So ads will usually involve just a one-way communication, like the OOH advertising, that consumer may not actively respond, but still absorb the message from the brand or the product. And visual elements such as image, color, font, and layout will create a strong emotional and cognitive effect when the customer looking at an advertisement or the commercials on TV, televisions, any kind of touch point that have the visual in them. And although ads aim to be entertaining for the customer, and not all the customer will feel the emotional intent of that advertising, which will lead to the debate over the ad effectiveness. However, the advertising also remains a very powerful way to influence how people feel about the brand when used effectively. Uh, the second factor is about color. So color, like I've said above, just like in the service environment also serve as a powerful visual stimuli that creates emotional association with brands and products by enhance the memory and increase the likelihood of purchase. So each color will carry a specific meanings and evoke a certain feelings about the product or the brand, which therefore shape how they perceive the product and brands. Um, uh, for instance, color they will list into the functional color like blue, and functional color like blue will fit better with the functional product. Social color like red will fit with the social product. And in the digital space, the color choice will actually influence how user perceive the website and the product features too. For instance, like when you choose calm color like blue or green, it can encourage the users to stay longer on their website, on their page, and explore more deeply about the brand or the product. More than when we just having like a whole red uh, website is very annoying and hard to stay long for the customer. And color also affect the price perception of the customer too. And therefore, we can see that the green dollar, green is using in dollar, which interpret as a better deal for the customer than when we use a red or orange dollar, which could be viewed as a more aggressive or urgent. Mm. So that's how we use color in shaping the price perceptions of the customer. Now we talk about the role of design. So product design play a crucial role in capturing the consumer attention and shaping their emotional and cognitive reactions when they look at the product design. And it's often a very first aspect that the in customer notice when they look at the product, and therefore forming the basis of their first impressions about the products. Is it good? Is it a prop? Is it ugly or is it beautiful? So the design will encompass the several visual elements like shape, color, material, texture, and all of that will contribute to the overall aesthetic value of the product. And the design also impact the perceptions of the functional quality, for example, the durability, the usability of the product, or the technological value. Like for example, Apple products have a very sleek minimalism designs that and they also have the titanium, aluminum uh, outside the case, and therefore it's foster a very good uh, durability and usability perceptions in terms of the customer eyes. So therefore, a good design will enhance the quality of life and sensory enjoyment of the customer when using the product too. And therefore, the ideal product is to have the balance between the aesthetics and the functional value for the best customer experience. Now we'll talk about the logos of the brands. So logos functions as the immediate visual identifier that will help the consumer quickly recognize and emotionally connect with a brand because it can influence how individual feel about the product and the company behind it. So and often contribute to the overall sense of trust, familiarity, or the quality of the products too. So the aesthetics quality of a logo, like a shape, color, style, adds to the visual pleasures of the consumer, which in turn strengthens the emotional connections with consumer and the brand. So, for example, like the Starbucks logos features a series referencing the Seattle's maritime heritage, uh, and therefore evoking a sense of mysteries and tradition in the customer mind in when they first established. So, most logo will combine the visual symbols with the company name like Starbucks and the Siren's visual that they choose for their logos, then that enhancing the memorability and the brand identity for the brand. Lastly is about the name itself. So a brand name is a powerful visual stimulus that will quickly associations, and the brand name actually should be simple, easy to pronounce, and memorable, and especially for the low engagement product like lip tones or Colgate, etc. And for high engagement product like cars or electronic, it may have more complex name that require more customer efforts to remember because mm, uh, the complex name is actually uh, will foster a more, trustability and professional into that brand. And this the name align with the concept of brand personality too, where customers actually perceive brand as uh, if they were a person. because like a person have a name, and therefore a brand will also have a name that represent that person. So uh, they will embody traits, emotions, or identity they can relate to that brand in terms of their names. So the name of a brand have to associate with the brand personality, the brand identity. And lastly is about the packaging in terms of brand and product. So packaging is a key visual and sensory elements that shape how the consumer perceive, evaluate, and interact with the product at the uh, initial and further explorations and experience with the product. So it's very important because it influences the expectations even before the product is tried or used. So when it makes it a vital tool in both marketing and product experience. So for packaged product like chocolate, soda, or medications, the visual design of the package become a primary driver of attention and perceived quality of that product. So if the package of the product look beautiful, look possible, look very professional, the customer, when looking at the package, can actually perceive it as a very good product. And furthermore, customer will respond to the intrinsic cues of the package, such as color, the labels, logo, and red tag, and also the intrinsic cues, such as the feel, the look, or the smell of the product itself. So the packaging now have to fulfill two main functions. First is the aesthetics. It should be attractive by using color, label, logos, intrinsic cues, like I've mentioned above, that make it attractive and align with the brand identity and stand out on shelf. And the packaging also has to fulfill the functional uh, aspect of it because it must protect the product during transport, ensure the freshness and safety, and convey the essential information like ingredient origins and usage instructions to the customer. And nowadays, modern packaging also need to meet the hygiene and communication standards of many organizations. Uh, they strictly enforce the brand or product to do so. Like they have to, the packaging have to offering the data of the freshness, authenticity, nutritional value, traceability, and safety into their package. And uh, let's talk about one useful framework is the layering packaging taxonomy. And this framework actually explains the package along two dimensions that help us understand more about how pack packaging in brand and product works. So first, the dimension is about functionality. So purchase packaging, like what influence the shopper at the point of sale. It's called the purchase packaging, like the outer wrapper. And more about functionality dimension is about the consumption packaging. So that is the packaging that enhance the user experience that can during the consumptions like the inside wrapping or the product sections. Another dimension of it packaging is the physicality, like the outer layers of the chocolate bag wraps or the intermediate layer of the individual piece wrappers and the inner layer like the chocolate surface texture, shape, or color. All of that will explain how the packaging actually works. And packaging is also the end of the chapter 3. Now we're moving on to the chapter 4. So the chapter 4 will give us an overview of sense of sound and its importance in sensory marketing, and especially the characteristic of sounds, its role in different cultures, and as well as significance of auditory cues and stimuli for brands, products, and service environment will be analyzed and discussed in chapter 4. So the table content will also include 5 parts. First part is human ears and hearing. Second is characteristics of sounds. Third one is perceptions and substantial cultures. The fourth is service environment. And lastly, we'll discuss a brand and product related to sound. First is the human ears and hearing, the first segment. So this part begin by we discuss with each other that sound is an omnipresent part of human present and start is starting from a very beginning of our life when we heard our mother heartbeats in the warmth. It traces down to how sounds accompany us throughout the typical day, from the morning dawns, the morning alarm to the radio jiggle to the TV commercial, the car radio advertisement, the background music in the rental environment, and conclude with an evening entertainment that also incorporates the music elements. So the sound role in identity and emotion is very important because sound actually contributes significantly to the individual perceptions and experience of our environment. Because actually uh, our brain perform in auditory sense analysis. So it's actually continuously parsing sound to detect the threats, the opportunities, or the change in our surrounding and give us an immediate spatial awareness and context of the environment. So that's why it's have a very important role in individual perceptions and experience of the environment. Secondly, is it's also play a significant role, vital role in identity formations and self-expression because the musical taste, the accent of how we talk, and the language dialect are sound signal that communicates our personality and our cultural background and our group affiliations. Uh, It's actually clearly that different people from different provinces of Vietnam have different accents, and it's tell very much how where the cultures they come from, the group affiliations from. It's actually forming the very much brand, very much individual identity and their self-expressions. And lastly is the emotional communication. So the sound can convey whether someone is laughing, crying, screaming, or singing, because the our ear and our the connection between the ear and the brain can notice the change in pitch, in tone, and rhythm, and volume, and then they directly engage the brain limbic system. As we study in the chapter two, the limbic system that let us detect and mirror the other emotions immediately and ultimately. And this sound role in identity and emotion sets stage for understanding sounds as a fundamental aspect of the human interaction with the environment, with each other. Secondly, we talk about the commercial approach applications of sound. So for company, restaurant, and retail store, public space use music and voice as a natural part of their service environment, and both used in a providing a sound experience of a brand or a product to the customer. And different context, different place, different environment, service will call for a different musical approach like in shopping center music in shopping centers different from the gas stations. It's different from the sporting event and political and religious gathering. It's all different. And lastly, we discuss about the digital revolution in music access. So um, the nowadays streaming service like Apple iTunes Store, Spotify, Google Play, and other platform streaming service platform provide us the opportunities to download the music for free or charge and they therefore enhance our accessibility to music. And this rapid development in music technology is described as an easy to handle and accessible way, and it's benefiting not only the individual, the customer, but also the business in various social contexts. So for the customer, how can the digital revolution in music access actually help them, actually benefit them? So nowadays, consumer uh, will consume the music without any limitations via the digital tools. From old music to new music, they can hear it all. And therefore, because their access is much more easier, the expectation for music experience is also increased and uh, it's much higher than before. For the company, on the other hand, they have the ability to develop and create new sound experience for the brand, product, and their service environment via a very uh, comprehensive, very you know, enhanced digital revolutions in music access. Next, we'll talk about the characteristics of sound. The first part is the auditory perception. So sound actually consists of three different elements like ambient sound, voice, and music. So in terms of ambient sound, it's defined as a sound imitating from animals, birds, or sound machine, and it's unrelated to humans or musical instruments. A voice, on the other hand, is a sound coming from a person, identifiable as a voice, such as a baby scream or a song by Shakira, and it will note that comedy will often use voice, including the voice of celebrities, in their radio, their TV commercials, etc., or their promotion touchpoint. And therefore, the voice of a spoken person are very important in terms of when the message is delivered, and therefore it has to be seen as a basis for the positive or negative sound experience for the customer when they see in advertisement of a brand. Lastly is about the music. So music is a sound imitation from an instrument, a song, or combinations of these. So it will creating beauty, harmony, and emotional expressions when customer hear it. And music influence an individual emotional state. How it influenced an individual emotional state, it will be discussed in deep later in the chapter, and it will be very significant. And have you ever wondered what will happen in our brain if we listen to a famous melody, why we remember it so clearly? And to explain it, actually the melodies and words associated with melodies actually processed and stored in the right hemisphere of our brain. So where they are, so it's a memorable and remember in the right hemisphere, and this will explain why the jingling and the slogan in the song that a brain promotes us will linger in our memory for a very long time. Secondly, talking about the sensory organs of the ear. So the about the physical process of hearing. So how can we hear all the sounds, stimuli, all the sounds in the environment? So an individual will perceive sound through the physical process of hearing. So it's how the sound transforms from the environment to our mind. So the sound wave is actually impact the eardrum and causing it to vibrate. And this vibrate will transform the vibrations into our brain to make it into a sound. And the sound strength is usually measured in decibels plus sound filtering and sensation. So, um, for human like us, certain sounds we hear are filtered out and not given a very conscious attention because, like I said in a previous chapter or part, that we will preference and we will want to hear the sounds or ethic that we have interest in or like about, and we will exclude not to hear the thing we not like. So furthermore, lower sound are actually easier to notice, like computer, the sound of fan, or the refrigerator noise, will easier to be noticed by human. And when the lower sound disappear, this we as a human might react with relief. And also, people will also perceive silence as a sound in the brain, so many of us will expect another sound to break the silence. Lastly, it is the intimate nature of sounds. So sound is experienced inside our head and in a more intimate way than the other sense, unlike sight. Unlike sight, it perceived through the eyes outside the head. And sound can contribute to the individual frame of mind and psychological state. For example, a sense of peace and quiet, and it can therefore create the feelings of peace and quiet in a person. So sound also contribute to the intense emotion and feelings among individual, like music and voice are the most influential stimuli for the sound experience of the customer. Now we come to the psychological aspect. First, we will discuss about the linkage between the emotions and music. So in this part, we explain why music has such a significance in perceiving and experience emotions in individuals. So music is actually based on three aspects: the sound, the behavior, and the concept to explain the linkage. So first is the sound. So sound defined as a auditory signal that the musicians will produce when the audience perceive and experience it. Behavior is that the music, when it's uh, when it's heard, it will derive activities such as dance, performance, or rituals of great importance for the musical appearance. So it's often connected with the historical or psychological or a social analysis of social experience of a group or a cultures. Uh, Lastly is by the concept, so it's the interpretation of melodies or songs related to a special social group or a society. So it's like the concept of a music, a different kind of music for each social group or each culture group. So um, actually, these three aspect of music influence very much by the difference between individuals and the uh, group that those individuals are in, because once they suggest that individual actually influenced by music through their emotional content, their experience base, their emotional reactions. So therefore, music for them becoming an emotional label, and of course, therefore for brand, music also becoming an emotional label. So, how can we describe the linkage between the music and the emotions? So, there are actually two ways to explain it. Two category, which is the culture and conventions, has been proposed to express the relationship between these two. So, about contour, which related to the different melodies, tempos, and music style, and these were illustrating the natural linkage between the emotional and music. So, let's take an example to make it clear. So for fast music, actually associate with happiness. It have a very fun melodies, fun, fast tempo. So it represents the happiness of human emotion. While slow music is actually associated with sadness and peace because its melody is very slow, the tempo is slow too, and often it's come with the sadness or peace emotion of people. On the other hand, the conventions are the learned, the cultural, and the individual association that will tie the musical feature to the emotion. And this go beyond the natural link of the contour, like because of tempo or melody or style, it's the contour, but conventions go beyond that. It's the learned, the cultures, and the individual associate the music with their emotion. So these conventions is actually developed over time through the shared experience, through the social context, media, and personal memory of that individual. Like, let's take an example to make it clearer what I mean here. So, in Westerns, a minor key chord like A minor or D minor in Western music is actually associated with sadness, and even if it's even slower or not quieter than a major chord like the F major. It don't sound slower, it don't sound quieter, but the Western cultures still associate the minor key chord with the sadness. When we talk about the linkage between music and reactions, so the most common reactions of human being and people towards music is expressing their emotions. So music is usually used to express the individual in the most emotions and feelings. That's why many musicians with a lot of breakup bring in their sadness into their song to create a very sad and very good songs for us to hear. And music therefore become a universal emotional language for human being. It's go beyond just the individual moods. Music also tap into a broad emotional category that everyone share when they heard the music. That's why, like I said, the musicians with a lot of breakups write a very good sad song, and when we hear their song, we actually also catch up with that emotions of sadness and heartbroken. Therefore, music now becoming an abstract understanding of individuals' emotional life. So, like for example, when we see our friend post a story on Instagram or Facebook with a very sad song, we know that there's something going on with her boyfriend or something like that. She must be very sad. So that is a universal emotional language of music. So there's actually two theoretical approach when explaining the relationship between music and reactions. So the first approach is the cognitive approach. So this approach have a more linkage to the universal emotional language that I've talked about music above, because it's claimed that the reaction created by among the individual as they listen to music is actually based on the emotional meaning of music, which mean that they're possible for individual to recognize the sadness in a special music genre, and the melody or song in this approach does not create a sadness. So, which means that when we heard a sad song with, like I've said, slow tempo, they are very, you know, have slow pace, uh, or they use some of the minor chords that sound very sad. So we can catch up with the sadness uh, based on just that music chance. So if it's ballad, we think that is sad. and there's nothing to do with the melodies of the song. On the other hand, the emotional approach claims that the melody or song actually is because to the emotional response in individuals. So it's kind of the opposite. So when we hear a melodic that create sadness. So it causes us to feel very sad, although that the pace of the uh, music is fast. It's used in, some music theory or some chords that sound very fun. But if the melodies we heard, we see the sad, so we will uh, catch up with the sadness emotion in that song. Come to the next segment, which we will talk about the sound perceptions and substantial cultures. In this segment, we will include five parts. First one is auditory perception. Second one, we will discuss about the individual preference. The third is the music style, personality, and sex. The fourth is about group preference, and lastly is about sound symbolism. Let's discuss about the first two parts, which is the auditory perceptions and individual preference. So, what is auditory perceptions actually in this part? So, auditory perception is how individual, like I said, receive and interpret, understanding the existing auditory cues and stimuli in the environment and their outside world. So, which means that how they hear and understand the sound of the environment. So these stimuli, these cues, auditory cues they've seen that they have heard would be transmitted in the air and then reach the ear through the sound wave, like I've said in the sensory organs. So when it reach our mind, it means that we will have to explain it. Our brain will explain it. And because each person will have different ways of explanations to the stimuli, because we have different preference, we have different backgrounds and cultures and sex. So this creates a different explanations to the stimuli based on each individual. So the auditory perceptions of each person and each people is completely different from each other. So next we will discuss about the individual preference in the auditory perceptions. So how can it change or shape the auditory perception? So the first thing is that there's a role of language and sound and words in communications. So in every substantial culture, language, sound, and words will convey the sensory meaning for the individual and in all kind of community communications. So therefore it's serving as a universal tool for a person to conveying the meaning and their emotions. So that is the role of language, sound, words in how we communicate with each other, is convey the information. Next is the music will be a personal expressions like I've talked about. People will express them, themselves, their emotions by through music. So music is always used by many individuals to communicate their own attitude, their emotions, therefore their attitude, as well as their self-image, said before, and personal values. So it's acting as a tool for identity reflection. So that is how uh, music shape the individual preference. So each person, each brand image they want to show other people. Therefore, the music they heard also convey the brand, the image that they want others to see. Lastly, is about the aesthetic perception of music. So it's evident from a research that many listeners of classical music will perceive the aesthetic expressions of the music of classical music, whether or not they are trained to do so. So it will indicate the natural aesthetic appreciation of people toward the music, music genres, which means that the individual will feel and react to the music without considering the context, the mood, or the past association. So when they heard, which means that when they heard the classical music, they uh, even if they don't heard it before, they will feel that the classical music is very, um, luxurious, very intelligent, something like that. So it's the aesthetic that the music bring to the individuals that they can feel it inside them. So let's talk about music style, personality, and sex, right? We all have different style of music based on our personality and our sex too. So this part will explain clearly how it actually working together. So the influence of music preference on personality first. So music. preference play an important role and contribute to shaping an individual personality and influence their self-concept because, like I've said before, people want to have a identify self-image that they want to have and they want others to see. Therefore, they have a personality, individual personality they want others to see. So music will play a role in expressing those things. It's therefore it's it's a way to expressing those things, and also it's a thing that contributes and shape the personality itself too, and the self-concept itself too. So many individuals will create their self-image, like I said, based on their style of music that they want to show others, and using music as a deliberate tool for their self-presentations. Like I've said, they have a self-image they want to show, and they use music as a tools, as a means to actually showing their personality, their self-image that they want others to see. So let's take an example, right, to make it clear. So the music style, such as hip hop or hard rock or rap, is mostly preferred by young men and teens that they have a strong circle of friends, which actually that kind of music will reflecting their social bondings between those people. Also, the one that's described as a reckless, like taking risk, and more aggressive and violent, is also prefer this style of music, and it will indicating a personal correlations between what they are, their personality, what image they want to show people between the music style that they choose to listen to and they choose to sing. And actually, there's a part that we need to discuss about, which is the impact of the social class on the music style, the music genres that the individual choose for them to express them. So, decided when it's come to the music preference and social class, the researcher showed that the intellectual music genres, like example, classical music, is mostly appeal to a high social class with high educational background. So it will, which means that the classical music the individual in the high education background or high social class use classical music as a way to describe themselves at a higher level of social class in the society because classical music, I've said, it sounds luxury. It sounds very um, rich and sounds very intellectual. So that is why. On the other hand, non-intellectual music genres like country or gossip or rap will appeal to individuals from mostly the working class with low educational background, reflecting the class-based taste because you know uh, from the very beginning of those music genres, where it's created like hip hop, it's created by the working class people. It's born to serve and to show an image of the working class people. So that is about social class and music genre. So let's dive into how gender actually influence the music preference and music perceptions of each individual. So men and women will perceive music in different way, of course, because especially concerning a hard or a soft sounding music. So often in society, feminities likely link with soft sound music, while masculinity and hard sound music goes together. And uh, by to explaining this, we can basing on the biological difference between men and humans. So, like in the previous chapter, we've said that music, women will have a more emotional base, emotional reaction and respond towards the stimuli in the environment. Men, on the other hand, less emotional on everything. So, the soft music will actually more appropriate for the uh, woman with highly emotional reactions and respond towards the environment. Men, on the other hand, they like hard thing that can express their masculinity. Yes. So it's this one will highlighting the gender-based preference to the music itself. So let's talk about group preference in music. So, uh, just like any individuals that want to express their self-image, want to express their personality, lifestyle, anything like that, they use music to express it. So, a certain societal group or societal cultural group will also use music to express their community and society. So, music is used in many societal cultures as an expression of emotions and experience among different culture groups. So it's fostering a cultural cohesion of that group. So the second very famous and common example to explain this, which is the national anthems. So, like I've said, for Vietnamese people, when we're singing the national anthem, it unites the citizens in pride and collective identity of that nation. So whenever we sing national anthems of Vietnamese, I've always proud and I always feel united with the people that's singing together around me as a Vietnamese people. Proud to be a Vietnamese and very proud of our country. So that is what music, the role of music in the society group or cultural group is express the emotional of all the individual in that group, and especially uh, this we use mostly the music we use mostly in this case in public ceremony or sporting events. But also, there's a there's also a evidence that the link might exist between emotional and music that goes beyond the actual social cultures. So, for example, when a Western listener react to the Indian musicians play melodies and song, their reaction is actually the same way as an Indian listener. So there's no difference between Western listener and Indian listener when they respond to the India song. So which provide that the listener with emotional such as the song also provide the listener with emotions such as anger, sadness related to the complexity and the tempo of the Indian musics. So it's kind of linked with the the mm, cognitive approach. Yes, the cognitive approach, like I said above, in the theory of music and reactions. So lastly, we talk about sound symbolism. So definitions of sound symbolism is the linguistic process of how the sound of a word will provide us with stimuli about a word meanings for an individual is called a sound symbolism. So in short and in an easy way to understand, which means that sound symbolism is when the sound how of a word, the sound of a word is how it sounds, how it's heard. Give us and give you a feeling or a hint about what it means, even if we have never heard that word before. So, for example, to make it clearer, when we heard the word buzz, it will sound like, oh, I think it sounds like a noise that a bees make, even if we've never heard anyone say that word before, we immediately recognize that, oh, it sounds like a beast. Or when we heard the word tiny, we will think, oh, this word sounds small and soft. So it sounds symbolism. So let's talk about the phonetic symbolism in branding. Okay, so researchers has indicated that phonetic symbolisms effect might affect brand name perceptions, and that can be the same across different language in societal cultures such as China or France or Spain, suggesting that this sounds important. This how the words sounds that have a universal influence on brand perceptions. So just like in short, it's just like what I've talked about sound symbolisms above when people in different cultures, different country, in different central cultures like China, France, and Spain, they heard the same sound of the brand name, so they spoke the brand name, they heard the brand name. It's actually this. They will have the have the no have a feeling or hint about the meaning of that brand name exactly the same with each other, even though they're from different country. So it's really affect how individual among different country perceives about that brand name. So let's take an example. Oh, wait. We talk about the university of the symbolic association. First, the symbolic associations actually is coming from how a specific word sounds that are not language specific, which indicates that these associations can overcome the linguistic boundaries. So just like the example I've talked about how the B sounds must work, actually go beyond just linguistic boundaries or every person in every country. When they heard the word buzz, they will recognize that, okay, it's the B sounds. No need, it's nothing related to the language they speak because the B sounds like the same in every country. So that's the universality of symbolic associations. So um, I have one more example to actually clarify the talk above. Is the example of the vowel sound. The vowel sound. So example that the A sound in the word father and the O sound in the word bot is actually associated with large objects, demonstrating how a specific vowel sound can evoke a perception of size. So whenever we heard about father or bot, we'll think that, oh, it's this mean that that thing is actually big, right? So that's how sounds work. So because of that, we have recommendations for universal meaning in brand's name too. Like I said above, uh, marketers should actually try to embed the universal meaning of sound in the brand name. So they will be the we advising the marketer to use the phonetic elements that resonate across different diverse cultures to enhance their global appeals when the brand name are spoke between each country and each culture area. So in the fourth segment, we will talk about music in the service environment. First, auditory stimuli in service environment. So actually, most retailers and service provider will apply the auditory cues and stimuli such as music, sound, or voice in creating an appealing and attractive store atmospheres for the customer. So in overall, the purpose of this is to enhance and provide a memorable shopping experience for the customer. Also about integrated advertising. So in the service environment, advertisement and TV commercial with music are actually also applied to catch the customer attention and interest through the music, sound, and voice. So let's take an example for the for this part. So for example, uh, when we go into a luxury restaurant, a Michelin star restaurant, we have to heard the a nice, quiet, peaceful classical music, and this will create the feelings of luxurious and high-end Michelin's atmosphere, and for us to step into that place, and overall uh, it enhanced our experience with that restaurant. The food became much more tastier and much more beautiful when it's bring out to our table, and if it's the date, we will remember it for the rest of our life. But we have that kind of luxurious experience. And on the other hand, how can uh, the service environment apply the in-store music to enhance the overall customer experience? So the applications of sound across service environment, brand, and product, highlighting a multi-phase impact of sound towards those things. Because in service settings like a restaurant and store, sound through sound, in this case, through the background music and the staff tone, anything that related to sound that the customer hear will shape the atmosphere, and therefore, if it shapes the atmosphere like above, it will influence their customer mood, their satisfaction toward that experience, and therefore their loyalty by creating or not creating an engaging or relaxing environment when they step into that service environment and they perceive and they get the service they want. So for a brand, the audio elements such as jingle and the audio logos actually enhance the recognitions and the emotional connections of that brand, with marketers encouraged to align these sales uh, with the brand value for consistency and the cross-cultural appeals. So, which means that when the marketer they use sounds, they use music, anything related to sound into their brands, into how they promote their brand, they need to align it with the brand value and brand personality to make it consistencies across the culture appeal, make it consistencies between customer and make it appeals in different cultures. So let's take a McDonald, I'm loving it, jingle campaigns to actually illustrate what we have talked about. So this campaign actually take a is a very good case study of how a brand can use auditory stimuli and auditory cues in their advertisement, their promotions, and therefore apply it back into the in-store experience of the customer. So in this campaign, Across this restaurant, TV and radio ads and digital channels, all kind of the touch point that customer will experience at McDonald's. It's used the five note I'm loving it melodies and uh, more uh, moreover about the in-store soundscape. The jingle I'm loving it melody will play as a key moment like when we order uh, the product and when the products are ready, the five notes I'm loving it will speak up and then it reinforcing the signature earworms throughout the visit of customer in the stores. So why this campaign is so effective because it immediately help the customer to recognize the brand through the five note I'm loving it. So those five notes, regardless of the language, will trigger the customer with the McDonald brand, and it will trigger in the emotional, uh, it will trigger in the customer mind. So whenever they heard the five note, I'm loving it, da, 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 they will recognize that, oh, this is McDonald. And secondly, is about the positive emotional cues of the five notes. So the upbeat, the major key melodies evokes the friendliness and fun aligned with the McDonald positioning as a cheerful, family-friendly place that I've talked about how brand and marketer have to uh, create a audio elements like jingle or audio logo that it have to align with the brand value and the brand personality to create the consistency. So in this case, by McDonald, their five note, I'm loving it, actually create a very fun and cheerful uh, emotions that align with the perceptions of the customer about McDonald's. And lastly, is that this campaign have the consistency across all channels. So whenever you heard it, the five note in the store, on radio, or online, the same sonic logo link all touch points into a unified brand experience. So basically, in all kind of any touch point, any channel that McDonald's exists, the five note actually the same and create the same experience for the customer when heard it. So let's talk about how sound used to shape the shopping experience of the customer. First is uh, how music can actually influence the shopping behavior of the individual customer. So in this part, we talk about the foreground and the background music. So the foreground music, for example, the top 20 hits in Billboard, or the background music, like an instrumental music, classical music, have no lyrics, actually affects how the shopper perceives time spent in the store. So all the shopper felt that they would spend more time with when they go in the store and they heard before crowd music, the top 20 hits before, for example. And on the other hand, the younger shopper, they will felt the same. They will stay in, they felt that they will stay in the store for a longer of time when the store having the background music, the instrumental music, they have no lyrics. So this will related to the familiarity between two kind of customer segments with the music play, and this familiarity is actually key roles in these perceptions about how long the customer will stay in the store. Secondly, it's about music and purchase decisions. How can it influence the purchase decisions of the customer? So let's take a case study. It's not a case study. A second example in the wine sales. So actually, there's findings that classical music in a restaurant will lead customer to buy more expensive wine compared to top 24 music. And I think the explanations for this is that the classical music will create a sense of luxurious and richness in the customer that make them feel more relaxed in spending their money. Therefore, they will buy a much more expensive wine compared to when we streaming the top 20 musics on Billboard. Uh, on the other hand, another example is by National Music Association. So, if a French or a German background music is streamed in the wine store, it will influence the customer to buy more wine uh, from the country that the music is actually streamed. So it's related to the associations between the music with the culture. Thirdly, is about music and emotional atmosphere. So in the coffee department study, so They said that different music genres like classical, epic, or lounge in the supermarket, the coffee department will create a positive atmosphere for the customer when they go shopping at this place, which will increase the customer satisfaction, make them more relaxed, and then they therefore spend more time in the supermarket in the department, uh, and therefore they will buy more or they will consider more products to buy. And the findings found that the lounge music will have the strongest effects to make the customer feel more relaxed and then boost their mood. Another thing is that the perceived store image. So uh, for each kind of store, different kind of store like restaurant or a convenience store or the mom pop shop store. So each store will align with a different uh, music type of music to make the overall atmosphere or overall service environment to be more consistent. So classical music might make the shopper perceive a store as a more upscale, even if it isn't. So whenever we step into, a uh, for example, wine store, if they if we heard the classical music in that store, we will perceive that, oh, this wine store may actually very sell very good products, for example, or the brand may be very a luxurious brand, for example. Lastly is about the unconscious influence of music. So many shoppers actually, when they go into a store and they heard the music in the store, they don't consciously remember what music is actually played at that store, but it still significantly affects their emotions, behavior, and spending habits that I talk about. So there's actually some note for using sounds and especially musics in the service environment. So the first thing is about the service level. So background music actually reduce the perceived wait time. So we need to keep it in mind because, uh, like for example, in the banking environment, when the store they play the background music, it will make the customer feel like their waiting line will less, waiting time will less, and therefore improve their service experience. And it's also create a positive emotional response, which reducing their dissatisfaction during the queues when they are to waiting for their, their lines. On the other hand, the music when we play it in the service environment is also uh, have a emotional cost, reduce the emotional cost of waiting. Like for example, in the supermarket, the background music will improve the customer moods when waiting in line, just like the bank above. Then this will help lower the emotional cost of waiting during the checkout. Secondly, it's about the music occurrence. So music, like I said in above, should match with the environment. So each store have to match the music with the store appearance and the store feelings. So therefore, the customer will be more satisfied when they heard the music align with the store or the restaurant design and atmosphere. So for example, when we step into a French restaurant that play modern pop music, instead of generic radio hit, it will increase our relaxations and the service quality rating of the customer will increase. And concurrent music will enhance the positive emotion and therefore boost the customer intent to return into a restaurant again. Lastly is about music intimidation. So often we use music to keep the customer coming to our store and stay in our store for longer. But music can also be used as a tool to say goodbye to customer. So it's, for example, music can use to deterring unwanted crowd. So McDonald's in Australia, they can play classical music outdoors to repel the loitering teenager who dislike the classical music. And also, on the other hand, music can also used to reducing crimes. So in London Underground, the classical music played in the store actually leads to 25% drop in thief, 37% fewer in vandalism incidents, and 25% fewer in staff assault. So it is a very smartful way to use music to actually reduce the unpositive things in the store. So let's talk about music and sound in brands and products. So the first thing is about music in advertising. So actually, music will influence the emotional and cognitive. perception of the customer, because music will shape the emotions, like I've said, the moods and the attitude towards a brand. So, for example, the fast music will grab the attentions of the customer about the brands or the products on TV commercials, or slow music actually reduce it. And like I said before, the concurrent musics will which match the music with the ad message will enhance and record the positive evaluations for the customer. Furthermore, is the music needs to fit with the product affects preference, uh, which means that the product and the brands have to link with each other. For example, um, when the customer hear the music genres or music style that they like, it will associate with a higher product rating. Secondly, is about the music in product evaluations for customer. So the music is actually a mood driving, leads to mood driving decisions, because background music will influence the product choice of the customer. For example, uh, mm, the customer will select a pens based on the associate select the wine based on the associate music, like said above. When the wine store, they play a French or the German song, it will cause the customer to likely buy a wine from that specific country. So therefore it also leads to boost the product rating when the customer have a good mood from the uh, the music. uh, Thirdly is about the music embodiment. So music is actually a emotional and sensory trigger, because fast tempo and high pitch music, like I said, will evoke a positive feelings in customer, and slow tempo may deepen the mood of customer. Therefore, music will be the triggers to the memories and the expectations of the customer towards the brands or the products. Like when the TV commercials or any advertisement that play our childhood song, we tend to uh, gain the feeling of not logistics, like the feelings of remember about the old things. Uh, Secondly, is the about the brand embodiment. So the music can actually embody a brand identity in this ad. Like I've said, the music about the example of McDonald's. I'm loving it. The five notes, very fun, enthusiastic uh, tempo, and a note can actually evoke the customer perceptions about the fun and enthusiastic and happy mood and brand identity from McDonald's. So it's actually shaping the customer perception about the brand in overall. Next one is about voice in advertising. So actually, when the brands use the voice in their advertisements, the tone and speech rate is actually a very important factors that will shape how customer perceive that advertisement. For example, a low tone voice will make the customer perceive as a more credible and empathic. On the other hand, the faster speech rate will enhance the perceived speaker competence, but maybe hinder the message processing in the customer mind. Furthermore, it's about gender nuance in voice, because uh, in the customer mind, they will ultimately think and ultimately shape their mind that, okay, low voice may be more suitable for male, and the high tone usually suits for the female voice. Lastly is about the phonetic repetitions. I've said about the phonetic symbolisms above. Allow clear brand names with a phonetic symbolisms. Pronunciations will improve the recall and favorabilities of the customer all over the cross culture. And lastly is about the sound symbolisms. So uh, the about the product sounds first. So a natural sounds like a car engines can shape a brand identity and the user experience about that brand and the product of the brand too. Uh, and furthermore is about the conclusion sound. So, for example, the uh, the conclusion sound of the product or the brand will align with the expectations of the customer about that product. For example, when the customer heard about the when customers see an advertising about the uh, a toothbrush, so a toothbrush will actually cause an expectations about of the customer about that toothbrush product, that is okay. the sound very quiet and very clear. So they will indicate and expect that the toothbrush will be very feathers and very light. That when brushed in their mouth, brush the teeth, it will make them feel uh, kind of very comfortable and not annoying their mouth in the mouth. Furthermore, it's about the audio branding tools. So just like I've said about the McDonald, I'm loving it. Example, the jingle sound will reinforce the brand recall, or any sound icon related to the brand, like Coca-Cola bottle opening, like uh, the sound of Coca-Cola bottle opened will signal the product brand. So whenever the customer heard that sound, heard the bottle opening sounds, they will think, oh, it's Coca-Cola. So that is the power of sound symbolism in advertisement and brand product. So that is also the and that is also the end of the presentations about sensory marketing section 2, chapter 3 and 4. Thank you for listening.